Welcome to this episode of CDM Media Solution Spotlight. I'm your host, JD Miller. I'm excited to be joined by our partner Agile Lab today and their CTO and co-founder, Paulo Plotter. Today we're going to talk about a paradigm shift with governance shift left. Now, what do we mean by this? You may be familiar with traditional data governance processes, but there needs to be a mindset change for organizations. Also, how can this shift be enforced when we're considering different tech stacks for every organization? We're going to dive into this and oh so much more as we sit with Paulo after the break. Today, we're going to dive into talking about governance and the paradigm shift and that whole governance shift left. And before we even start there, Paulo, welcome. And start off, what is governance shift left?
Hi to everybody. It's very nice to be here. Governance shift left. Basically, governance shift left is the shift of governance accountabilities into the development process, in the development life cycle. And when I talk about development, I mean software and data engineering life cycle. Because nowadays the governance process is pretty much detached from the software production life cycle and data engineering life cycle.
Interesting. So what processes does it involve?
The data governance it has been defined in literature is the process of managing the availability, usability, integrity, and security of the data that is used in a company. So it's a pretty much complex process around data management. But what we envision is the convergence among the software engineering, the data engineering, and those data governance processes in one single process that is more business value aligned, someone would say stream aligned, in order to reduce the complexities of the overall process and the bottlenecks on those processes. Because when you have multiple teams acting on different planes, but with the same goal, so extract value from the data is the final goal of everybody here. If their processes are too much interconnected, they will slow down the overall time to market, because you need to synchronize multiple teams, multiple stakeholders, and so on. And this is slowing down the time to market for data initiatives.
So how is this different from traditional data governance processes?
The traditional data governance process has been conceived as a separated process that is sitting on top of the data engineering process. So typically in large enterprise, we have a data governance team that is responsible and accountable for the data governance process, but they are acting ex post. It means after the data is in production, then the governance team jump into the action and try to metadata the data, try to apply data quality and monitor the quality of the data, check the security and compliance, and whatever other accountabilities we want to bring into the picture. But this team is typically detached from the team that instead is implementing the data pipelines and the software that is needed to bring the data live in production. And this is causing a lot of problems. There is, first of all, an information gap because the data is going live in production without the proper metadata. But this is the data without metadata is not usable, is not trustable. So until the governance process is converging and creating the proper set of information around the data is almost not usable. So the data we are not able to convert data into value for the whole organization until everything is in place. The other problem is about knowledge handoff, because typically the knowledge about a specific domain is in the business. So we have domain expert that need to transfer the knowledge into the data engineering team that has the responsibility of delivering the software, the data pipelines to create the new KPI or the new report or whatever. But then they need to transfer this knowledge also into the data governance team to let them understand if the data modeling is correct, if the metadata has been fulfilled properly, if the data quality are consistent with the business goals. So this separation of duties is really impactful in terms of process orchestration and knowledge transfer. The governance shift left instead is envision one single stream that is delivering business value with a cross-functional team, bringing the data governance accountabilities into the development lifecycle. And the project, the software, the artifact that we deliver in production is not finished until we have covered all the data governance accountabilities as well. In this way, the domain expert is transferring knowledge only one time into one single team, and we have one single definition of done for the process for the delivery process. Okay, so this is the main difference between the shift left of the governance with the traditional one.
How hard is it then to shift to this mindset for organizations?
Because the current data governance practice are in place since I guess more than 20 years right now, it's quite hard to shift and to challenge this methodology. But I guess this is something long due, because governance right now is not working at large scale. Is working on small scale when the governance process is acting as a gatekeeper, but at large scale, creating this kind of bottleneck is not efficient and is slowing down the time to market. So we need to find alternatives, and it's quite hard to bring these responsibilities in the development life cycle, because it seems that we add duties to the team that is developing the use case. But anyway, we are just moving such amount of work that anyway must be done. So the metadata fulfillment, the data quality, the compliance and security checks, and so on. The amount of work that we need to have something healthy in the data, in our data landscape, is always the same. We are just shifting the amount of work from one team to another and reorganizing the teams. So once people is understanding this, that is, we are not increasing the amount of work, it's becoming quite easy.
Paulo, let's dive a little bit more into that. So how can governance shift left positively impact an organization?
The governance shift left, because it's becoming part of the delivery process as the software, as we do with software, basically has two benefits. The first one is that software delivery process has a very is a very mature process, and we are able to deliver very good quality software because we have a practice. So the software is going through several steps before landing in production. So we have the build phase, then we have the test phase with quality gates. So if the software is not respecting certain quality thresholds, let's say, is not going to be delivered in production. And then we have automatic deployment with CI/CD and so on, in order to continuously release changes into production. This is what is happening right now with the software. The idea is to apply the same principles also to the metadata. So metadata is becoming part of the same artifact in the data engineering project. So the data engineering project artifact is composed by software, metadata, and data. In this way, we can apply the same principle we apply in software engineering also to the metadata. So the first benefit is that we can apply quality gates. An entire company can set up quality gates for metadata. Just to do an example, let's say we want to have, when we deploy a new table, we want to have 100% of business description in place, or we want to have at least 20% of coverage for business terms coming from the business glossary. So these kind of policies can be applied in a very wide way, and this is automatically elevating the quality of our artifacts in the data engineering space. That it's something that right now is not happening, because the data is going in production, and then someone without no constraints is trying to reach a good level of quality in terms of metadata. So the first positive impact is the completeness and the quality of metadata that we can attach to the data since the beginning, without information gap between the data release and the metadata release. The second benefit is the automatic thinking between data and metadata, because if they are following the same life cycle, also in terms of building, test, deploy, and so on, and we have just one single team taking care of this consistency between data and metadata, this is delivering way better results than having one team taking care of data and one team taking care of metadata. One team going through a formal process to deliver software in production, and one other team instead editing metadata directly in production into the data catalog, for example. So this separation of duties is leading to inconsistency. And when it comes to the data catalog, where typically people is discovering data and trying to figure out what is the real meaning of a specific table and something like this, if the data catalog is not trustable because there are inconsistencies or there are missing information and so on, the end user will drop it, because if you jump into the data catalog, that should be the source of truth, and for several times you are not able to trust the information that you find over there, the next time that you need to understand something, you will jump directly into the domain expert. So you will contact directly the domain expert, dropping completely the catalog. So the second benefit of applying the shift left of the governance and the quality gates before to go in production is the completeness and the trustability of the data catalog, where companies are investing a lot of money.
So, how can this shift happen for policies not to be guidelines anymore?
This is an interesting question because when a data governance teams doesn't want to be a bottleneck anymore and want to distribute the accountabilities of being compliant with governance policies, typically is trying to emit guidelines. But guidelines in large enterprise typically fails because they are not enforced in any way, and they can't be enforced. If you have hundreds of teams working in parallel with different methodologies, with different goals and timelines and so on, nobody will care about the guidelines. So the trick here is to shift guidelines into code. So we need to have the possibility to codify those policies, those rules, and we need to have a platform that is helping you to apply the policies and enforce those policies as code under the hood. So in the middle of the process, typically in the deploy phase, so when people is doing CI/CD, maybe, or if you have an internal developer platform while you are doing the deployment phase of your use case, you need to have one single entry point where you can check the compliance of the artifacts with those policies. And those policies should be applied automatically, so they must be codified. For example, in WheatBoost, our platform for data engineers, we provide this kind of facility. So you have the possibility for the platform team to define policy as code in the language you want, with the pattern you want, no matter. And then we provide the possibility to apply and check those policies before that a use case is going in production, typically in the middle of CI/CD or in the build phase. It depends, okay? But what is really important is to have computational governance in place.
So, how can this be enforced when we're considering different tech stacks for every organization?
Yes, again, this is about platform engineering. If you want to be able to apply consistently across multiple platforms a specific practice, like the governance shift left, you need to abstract away the technology complexity. For example, in WheatBoost, our platform, where we enable to apply platform engineering principles into the data engineering space, we help the platform team to build those processes, those automation across multiple technologies, multiple platforms, and with the possibility to integrate whatever technological stack you want. For example, if you act at process level in the CI/CD, in the deployment phase, that part is particularly technology agnostic. So it's a very good point where you can inject behaviors, policy check, and whatever. For us, we envision a developer first life cycle. So all those policy check are happening against the code repository. So the code repository is becoming the source of truth also for metadata, not only for code. And in this way, we can abstract away the technology, because every deliverables is in the code repository, and we have one unique interface where we can place quality gates. This is the same happening in the software life cycle. Despite where the software is going to be executed on an application server, on Kubernetes or whatever, all the quality gates are happening before they land on a specific technology. The artifact is checked at a repository level or at CI/CD level and whatever. In this way, we can stay technology agnostic. And we are doing the same with the data engineering process.
Wonderful. Fantastic stuff. And you can find out more about WhipBoost at agilelab.it, and we'll talk more about a white paper here in a little bit. Paolo, thank you so much for letting us pick your brain today. Thanks again to Paolo for diving into this paradigm shift with governance shift left. You can find out more about WhipBoost and read some great white papers at agilelab.it. Thanks for listening to this episode of Solution Spotlight.